to close the gaps that are still present. So the reasoning behind this session is obviously not to reiterate that, but really to go a step beyond and try to explore what are the models that we have implemented, have experienced between implementers, donors, local actors. So in cyber capacity building, oftentimes the success or the failure of a certain project highly depends on the stakeholders involved, on the voices that have been heard and included, and of course, whether the effort was context specific and region specific. Also, from a very pragmatic point of view, it is impossible for one person or one actor to be able to do it all. We do not have the resources to do it all, so partnerships are not only a nice to have, but a necessity. So today we want to shed the light on some of the partnerships that are in place, exploring what works, what doesn't work, and hear from specific examples today. So we have today a panel of current partners of the ITU, so donors, implementation partners, and also local actors. We'll be exploring what makes a partnership successful, but also what are some of the challenges and obstacles that are still very present that are hindering an optimal capacity building. So some of these challenges, of course, are about the sustainability of these partnerships. Oftentimes, they're sort of like a one-off, opportunistic partnership for a specific problem, if I may say, and also really engage in an honest conversation about what are the key lessons and how we can improve on those. So I know there are some, obviously, implementers and also donors and local actors in the audience. So we're going to go through the panel, but I would really want you to be participating in this and have this as an interactive discussion. So let me dive right into it. I'll go to you, Rebecca, first of all. So Rebecca works with the UK government, and we have been collaborating under the JICAP project, National Cybersecurity Strategy. So the UK has been both a donor and a co-implementer, so an interesting partnership model in this. And I would like you to share more about this and also what makes this partnership successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. So thanks everybody for coming this afternoon. And so just the UK government, what we wanted to look at was try to provide an integrated package of strategic cyber capability building assistance to overseas partner countries. And over the years, we'd noticed we'd kind of invested in a range of activities aimed at improving these kind of capabilities. But these initiatives were often delivered very much in isolation by various implementers, rather than being part of an integrated package. And what we noticed is there was a missed opportunity to realise additional benefits due to the close and supporting relationships between these products. So the area that we were looking at, we quickly identified institutions such as the ITU and Oxford University. And the ITU had their guidance to developing a national cybersecurity strategy, and Oxford University had their CMM. And we developed a model that allowed us all to accommodate the specific conditions of an individual country's project. And bringing these three activities together and collaborating meant we were more able to meet the individual country's requirements. And kind of the benefits we found, kind of this kind of collaboration, was the access we had to knowledge between our individual institutions, our organisations, to help to kind of bring down and mitigate those risks and reduce the potential mistakes by greater understanding the context within that country. It's also kind of having the access to the people within those organisations. You know, their people are a lot cleverer than I am, and they have a lot of expertise and skills that we can draw upon to improve our own products, but also to make sure that we are delivering the best to a country. But we're also kind of ensuring that we are effective and efficient in what we are delivering. I mean, none of us have an endless pot of money to do this work, and we need to look at ways we can reduce the costs and delivery systems, and more importantly, where we can avoid duplication. You know, reducing the overload of delivery within a country, I've seen and I've heard of project fatigue. And most of the countries we work in have low levels of resources, and we need to provide them time to do their day jobs, as well as kind of develop the capacity and capability within their organisations. But also we need to achieve kind of greater reach by being effective and efficient. And this translates into a much more sustainable development impact. But also what we found is obviously, aligning yourselves with other organizations, especially those who have a proven track record of successful delivery, provides credibility to your offer to that country and is much more easily kind of then embedded. So the key factors of what I found to what makes kind of the partnership successful is be clear on what it is that you're trying to achieve. There are very many facets to cybersecurity, and you need to agree between you what your aim is before you even start to develop that solution. It's also really important to kind of understand and map the benefits that your offer is going to provide, and that will also help develop the clarity around your project. It can be something as broad as improving the security and resilience of a country, or really going down into something very niche, as in kind of identifying and categorizing critical national assets. But one of the other things I would also say is also to ensure the offer that you're providing can be tailored to meet the requirements of that country. Trying to embed what works in your country is most likely going to have minimal impact. And working with like-minded organizations who have the same view and have a complementary product or service will make that task a lot easier. But countries also need to be in the right position to receive or to undertake that work. They require adequate resourcing. We always ensure we have a senior sponsor in place to kind of be accountable for that activity. And there has to be that high-level commitment from within the government. So if the project does stall, then you can easily get the project moving. Without all this in place, we find that it is a non-starter. And lastly, kind of from my own personal perspective, I think one of the most important parts is really a lack of ego. Really understanding that we're not here to kind of promote or shout from the rooftops the names of those of us who are implementing. It is much more about what the country can highlight to show that its own capability is building and what they can kind of be the front and center of that work.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. And indeed, I will pull on one specific point that you mentioned, and that's ensuring this high-level commitment at the government level. And I think that in our partnership with Germany, so I'll turn back to you, Regina. So you are the cyber ambassador for Germany, and you have obviously shown commitment also to cyber capacity building. And since Germany has adopted a feminist foreign policy, this has also been reflected in the CCB support and funding through initiatives like her Cyber Tracks, which is a joint partnership with the ITU, co-implemented with GIZ, for the meaningful representation of women in cybersecurity. So I wanted to ask you, Regina, how does the Federal Foreign Office choose their partners? And how do you define a successful partnership for development cooperation and cyber capacity building?
Thank you, Yasmin. So let me perhaps first explain how we understand feminist foreign policy, because this is like a buzzword and makes some people happy and others very angry. So in our definition, feminist foreign policy changes this perspective from collective security to human security. And this is not, either or, but we have to have both perspectives, because in cyber especially, we move from a territorial understanding of security to something that is cross-border or borderless. And so what has to be protected is not the territory, but the people who actually interact in cyberspace. So feminist foreign policy in this understanding focuses on human security and has in mind to strengthen especially the resilience, the networking capabilities, the cyber literacy, the skills, also professional skills, especially in the least visible and the least active parts of society, and in the most vulnerable groups. So among them are, of course, women. We know about, cybercrime specifically targeting women, then youth, because our youth is present basically all the time in cyberspace, so they experience a lot of bad things there. Then also the elderly, because they don't have access, or they are perhaps victims to scam because they are not so experienced with this environment. And then, of course, minorities, for example, small language groups and others who don't have the same access to the information present online. And then, so this is the perspective, and then we have actually three elements for feminist foreign policy that are important to know. One is it's a rights-based approach, so we are focusing on the rights of these people or these groups that I was just mentioning. We are focusing on their equal access to resources, and then also on their representation in the discussions that we have in the formats, for example, the negotiation formats. And the program that you were mentioning, her Cyber Tracks, I mean your program, is basically strengthening this, the representation of women on all levels, for example, in cyber professions, but also, you know, when it comes to cyber norms negotiations or the cybercrime treaty negotiation that is currently ongoing. So we need women's voices there, and we need to strengthen their networks so that they feel more at ease when they speak out loud at these formats. So when it comes to how do we choose our partners, I mean, I think everybody looks for, at least from Europe, looks for the same criteria. There is this criteria of course, alignment of objectives. So do we align with our partner on the targets of this program? Then, of course, good absorption capacity is also something. That is the reason why many donors end up with the same recipients, because they have shown to be effective in this. Then we need a good governance environment, because cyber capacity building is not a standalone thing, but fuels, for example, digital transformation of a society, digitization of public authorities, strengthening capabilities of the security institutions in this country. So good governance environment is very important. And then good reporting, of course, because this is taxpayers' money that we are responsible for. And then also tangible effects, you were mentioning that too. So we would like to see both, a short-term change, but also a longer-term effect.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Regina. And of course, the role of governments is key in ensuring this. But the private sector can also play a crucial role to leverage partnerships for implementation. So at the ITU, we have the Cyber for Good project, which leverages companies' CSR, in short, in cybersecurity to address some needs on the ground in least developed countries. So I'm going to turn to you, Samuel. I would like you to share a bit about this experience in your role at Axon, and give us your view also on what were the key factors that are contributing to the success of such a partnership. Samuel.
Okay, thanks, Yasmin. I'll start by talking about how we got involved in Cyber for Good. So Axon is a consultancy, private sector consultancy in Madrid, Spain, focused in telecom, broad ICT space, with over a decade of experience there. But in the past 4 or 5 years, we've done a lot of work in cybersecurity, so helping governments with their cybersecurity journey, in various capacities. We've also done a lot of work with ITU, especially through working groups, the NCI working group, for example, the National Cybersecurity Strategy Development Guide Development, various ITUD working groups, for example. So we've been involved in the international dialogue, let's say, in cybersecurity for some time. We've also gained a lot of exposure to the problems that countries are facing at various levels of maturity, let's say. And from this, we've gained a lot of residual know-how and expertise in cybersecurity that's, it's sitting there, it's foundational to what we do. We might not necessarily be using all of it. I think what ITU Cyber for Good initiative's trying to do really is identify and partner with entities such as Axon that have this residual knowledge, have this know-how that they might not really be using or even selling at the time, but it's to really tap into that knowledge for the benefit of these member states that are at the lower end of the maturity stage that really need this help. And I think ITU, I mean, you have a lot of exposure to what's going on at the ground level with these countries, and at that level of maturity, we might not really be seeing this, or we're kind of pricing these countries out of it, let's say. However, we still have the expertise to really help. So I think what ITU is doing here with Cyber for Good is being a connector. They're brokering deals between people who have services to offer, entities that can, implementation partners that can do things, and they're connecting them with the people who need them most, the countries that need them the most. So for the benefit, let's say for the the member state, the beneficiary country, is that they gain access to these services. But there's also a number of benefits to an implementation partner like us. So, first of all, in what we've done, it's helped us strengthen our relationship with ITU, which is important to us. We also get to work on our CSR goals, which is an equally important thing. But we also gain exposure to these, like I said, these different types of problems that are happening, different situations that are being faced by these other countries. We get to apply ourselves there. And broaden this, this know-how, this experience that I mentioned. So, for me, I think the benefit of Cyber for Good and the driver of success here is that they're really creating win-win deals. Really, it's not just a one-way thing. So, it's been good to be a part of this, and overall, very positive experience both for us and for the beneficiary countries so far.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Sam. Definitely. And also in the spirit of being a connector as well. So we often, when we work in countries, they're not just quote unquote beneficiaries, but we really see them as equal partners. So also that the action that we do whenever we leave becomes sustainable. And a clear example of that is the work that we've done with Malawi. So I'm going to turn to you, Christopher, for the next question. I would like you to share a bit of about the experiences that we've had in Malawi working together with international partners in enhancing incident response capabilities. So I would like to know more about what the benefits that these partnerships have brought to this effort. Christopher.
Thank you very much, Ismi. Yes, my name is Christopher Banda from Malawi. Maybe let me say a bit background in terms of how the cyber environment, cybersecurity environment, I would say, grew. Around 2016 is when we had our first legislation, cybersecurity legislation, passed, and that one was funded by the World Bank. And thereafter, UK government came in, that was around 2016, to help us to develop the national cybersecurity strategy, which was developed, and then, of course, there were some delays in terms of approval because of the local issues. It was approved in 2019, and then we were in the implementation stage. And again, around 2018, ITU came in to help us, because in the law, it was we need to establish the national set. So ITU came in, and then they've guided us the whole process from the assessment, design, up to the implementation. It was a bit delayed because of the COVID issues. We finalized the implementation last year. And then there was also EU through Cyber for Dev program, which also came in terms of capacity building. During the COVID period, it were doing online, and it really helped. And then also UK government came in again on the national cybersecurity risk assessment, how to conduct, how to do. So these are some of the issues that I would mention that has been happening. I want to stress here that these have helped us extremely much, because cybersecurity, especially in the developing countries, is something that is just emerging. And again, you look at the priorities of government, they will prioritize other areas maybe not necessary to these issues. It could be a reactive approach. After something happens, then they will say, okay, let's help you with this. But with this kind of cooperation, especially the international partners, they have played a very big role to move in this area. Because if locally we started to talk about maybe the strategy they set, it would have been a challenge, especially to convince the policymakers, the seniors, to understand the whole process. Of course, as a country, as these partners are coming in, there is a need to have, I would say, a focal point, maybe a cybersecurity champion. Very key, because the local focal point is the one who should be able to drive and work together with these international partners. They're coming, but they need to work from one point. It's very key. And then another point which I want to say is with these programs, they have helped us even in our side awareness, especially to decision makers, and to have an understanding of these projects and the activities. So we really appreciate, especially again on the ITU. National set, to establish a national set is a process where you need to start from somewhere. You could start very small. You don't need like starting big. When we delayed in terms of implementing the cert due to the COVID, the program Cyber for Good really helped us. As I say, we started to engage the stakeholders in terms of assessment, designing around in 2018. And then 2019, the COVID issue came in. The stakeholders, the public were expecting us to start something. Say, okay, where are you now? You have engaged us. Where are we? But now with the Cyber for Good program through ITU, we started to provide services to the public, and that helped us to start in terms of building trust and also engaging at that level. So I would say these are some of which I would say they have really helped us, and I hope also other developing countries that have benefited the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. And I really liked your point also on the importance of trust building. That's definitely something that needs to be considered when building partnerships. So I've already seen that throughout this first part of the panel, we have quite the takeaways in terms of what are the good practices when choosing partners. So obviously, Regina mentioned good governance. Christopher, you mentioned also having a focal point on the ground to coordinate. So I'm going to turn to you, Rebecca, maybe to tell us more about what the challenges are and what the obstacles and difficulties are when choosing partners.
Thank you very much. So in the UK, kind of when it comes to choosing which countries who we work with, we are predominantly demand-led. So we consider the risks that country's facing and might be exposed to, and then we look to identify what we can do to mitigate those risks. And that's really where it comes from. But we have many, and I'm talking many, prioritization exercises. So for us, it's quite difficult at times to understand where we can, because obviously across most government departments, they all have a different level of priority for countries. We do find some commonality across us all, but this isn't always the case, which does make our job a little bit more difficult to understand where we should be focused. But currently, especially with the current cyber capability building program, which is based within the Foreign Office, that portfolio consists of 6 programs, and they focus in the Ukraine, Georgia, Africa, the Indo-Pacific, and we also work in partnership with India. There is also a global cyber program on the side, which looks at kind of the multilateral initiatives, tools, research, and they will focus on countries that aren't covered within the other areas. But we do have room for flexibility and to be agile to some of the new opportunities that do arise. So some countries which may not be totally forward-leaning to offers and may have a better opportunity with another country who's offering something. So it's important for us that we have founded a good bilateral relationship to begin with to be able to enable that work to go ahead. But we do realise that there is a varying level of support offered to countries. And, you know, we do see that obviously some countries have multiple offers from multiple donors, whilst, you know, some of the countries who have very little interest from international partners are normally the countries that are quite, as I would say, in the right position for doing some quite impactful work in a short period of time. But a key aim for us within the Home Office itself is to build that sovereign capability which is sustainable within the country. And we also encourage those countries who we've worked with to share that knowledge and that training with others in the region so we can try and deliver the impact more quickly. When it comes to kind of selection of partners, this kind of goes in two ways. So obviously through the private sector, you know, companies have to join one of the UK government frameworks to be able to work with us. There's no other route through this. And there is an assurance process that's developed by the National Cybersecurity Centre that's not mandatory to be able to have to work with us. But our tender process for contracts in the UK is robust and to ensure we get the right fit for the project. But other organisations, I mean, what we're looking for is for those who really are working on the same priorities as us and have the same goal as we are trying to aim towards. I mean, our focus next year remains on kind of C&I resilience, cybercrime and CSIRTs. So anybody who has an offer, a product or service that they think can fit within a strategic model, then we are always open to having a conversation. But the kind of three challenges we face are, the first one is mainly around skills. So obviously, depending on which statistical report you have a look at, there's somewhere between 3.5 and 4 million cybersecurity experts worldwide missing to be able to support activity. And that gap is expected to keep on growing as emerging tech is adopted more widely. And so the UK government is unable to release our key cybersecurity experts to help kind of deliver capacity building resource or support. So we are reliant on the private sector, academia, other organisations to help us deliver this activity overseas. And this has proven to be a successful approach. But the next challenge we have is around sustainability. And so while we are always committed to enduring relationships with countries, it is important to manage expectations on the length of confirmed support. So our government funding cycles are not structured to enable us to confidently develop long-term planning. It's normally about 2 to 3 years. But also political changes at the top can make us result in a change of focus, and we have to pivot to meet those new ideas. And this does sometimes impact our ability to support capacity building overseas. But the main one really is about measuring and evaluating the impact of what we do. So, as I said, most of our projects are delivered over 2 to 3 years, and quite often this impact isn't felt until about year 3, and then funding ceases. And it's kind of like, how do we then continue to measure those impacts? Once the project's closed down, that knowledge has moved on. And so we're investing quite a lot of effort to understand this better, but we need the countries to obviously go on that journey with us.
Thank you so much for that, Rebecca, and it makes for an excellent segue as well to the next question, because of course this is a challenge that we have observed a lot as implementing agencies and also among other partners, that of course some countries and regions, as you mentioned, have project fatigue. They're sort of overloaded with projects, while others less so. Also the sustainability issue, they're often constrained by budgetary or financial years of donors. So I'll turn to Regina for the next question. And maybe to pick your brain on how partnerships can maybe help overcome these limitations, and whether maybe a coordinated approach between donors, a multi-donor approach, can help achieve this success.
Thank you. I think this is exactly, this is the answer. So we need to coordinate better among donors, perhaps also invent or set up instruments that help us overcome these restrictions like budgetary years and so on. So instruments like, for example, trust funds. sometimes we have to fall back to short-term projects so that they fit in within our restrictions or to earmarking, but I would like to see other instruments more developed, and I would like to mention a few. So, coordination, we have like the GFCE, who is also part of this, of the organizers of this conference. We see extremely big potential for better donor coordination here. We would like to lend our support to the organization to develop this strength that colleagues certainly have, and become really the place to go if you want to do proper donor and recipient coordination. Long-term strategies are really very helpful, both national and regional long-term strategies. But I would like to mention one more that is very important in my point of view, and that is, we are at the moment negotiating within an open-ended working group another version of or another layer of understanding of the global cyber norms. This is going to be another document. So what we like to see as a successor to this negotiation process is actually a program of action, or POA, not only talking about editing a document, but also coordinating on capacity building, organizing confidence building measures, and other elements with a more long-term effect on stability in cyberspace. So we think that this program of action could also be an overall and global framework of what we would like to do with capacity building, because ultimately what we would like to do with capacity building is implementing the cyber norms. I have one more, more down-to-earth and a little bit more practical approach within my own system. We are sometimes just piggybacking on funding mechanisms that are by nature more long-term, for example, infrastructure investments. And I know that ITU is also has also very strong side here, because if you look at connectivity investments or other big infrastructure investments, cybersecurity often comes as an afterthought. You must make it included from the beginning, and by this we also have a more long-term perspective on the funding.
Thank you so much for that, Regina. I think it's good that you're getting creative as well and finding ways to do this, because also at the ITU we're working on trying to promote more and more how to mainstream cybersecurity into digital development projects and not have it as an afterthought. So even better that if that helps as well with overcoming the budgetary restrictions of the financial years. I'll turn back to you, Christopher, now for a question related to the beneficiary country's role. So obviously the success of a project really depends on the local actors. So you've mentioned, having a focal point to coordinate is important. But my question is, how important is it for the beneficiary partners to be part and involved into the design as well of projects, not only the implementation of cyber capacity building? So, and also if there's any good practices that you can share in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As a beneficiary country, I think, as I've said already, the need to have a focal point is a key issue, because the focal point is able to understand what is happening within the country, and maybe how best maybe you can contact with the international partners to assist. I will just give you one example. We have projects within Malawi, especially the World Bank, and there is one project which is looking at the financial inclusion. It's something different, not only direct on cyber security. I didn't know about that project because it's being implemented by another ministry with the regulator and also. So the aspect they were looking for is they want to do something on cyber security, but they didn't know where to start, what to do. So they were guided to say, can you contact this person? this institution so that they guide you. And then the point was to understand what are the challenges we're having. So when we provided them, then they managed to design an activity related to that issue. So the emphasis is to have a focal point so that other partners could look at best ways they can design and maybe identify an activity which can be funded. This goes together with the maybe cooperation among the partners, because it's not a competition, it's about working together and collaboration. Very important. It's not a competition, so that's need to be looked at that level. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you for that. Thanks for providing really a specific example on involvement of stakeholders, again, not just as beneficiaries. And also, I think it's very helpful on going back to Rebecca's point on prioritization exercises. I think local actors are the best persons to be able to help with that. Okay, so I'm turning back to you, Samuel, again. So as an implementation partner of the ITU, what do you think are the biggest challenges and also the biggest opportunities when working with various partners, be it donors or others, especially in the context of LDCs, which is a very specific one? Thank you.
Okay, so in our project, we've worked directly with the beneficiary countries. And for a bit of context, I mean, what we've done is, it's a pro bono project. We've pledged, let's say, to work with 5 countries to support them in their national cybersecurity strategy development, which obviously is an early building block of the cybersecurity agenda. And this is specifically focused on LDCs for this reason, or least developed countries. LDCs, obviously, as their title suggests, are underdeveloped in a lot of areas. They're going through a lot of transformation. And cybersecurity is usually one of these areas that is underdeveloped. But of course, they exist in an international landscape, a lot of international threats and things. So they're unfortunately still facing a lot of the same issues as more advanced countries, but they're behind. So they can't really afford to put cybersecurity to the back of the queue, and something that Christopher, you mentioned. In addition, I mean, as they're going through these developments in other areas, as we've talked about here, well, a lot of the infrastructure they're putting in is going to be connected somehow, digital. They want to start using the latest technologies. So they're going to be opening up a lot of new cybersecurity frontiers too. So cybersecurity, not only can it not be at the back of the queue, it really needs to be in the forefront, which some of the other panelists have said. So LDCs are in a very vulnerable position to start with. What we've tried to do, so what Axon does is, I mean, we're verifying what they're doing, first of all. We're asking them to send their draft strategy. We're giving a sense check to it, a bit of a gap analysis, seeing really where there are holes that we can give recommendations for its improvement. So, for example, if they're, I don't know, let's say they're not putting too much emphasis in a certain area, training or education, or they're not giving really enough detail. It's kind of soft commitments. We're trying to encourage them to take the action now to improve this quality and commit to doing things. Or they might be trying to run before they can walk, let's say. For example, let's say they're trying to identify critical infrastructures, but they haven't really thought about a risk assessment methodology to share with sectors in order to do this. So we're trying to identify these quick wins to improve the general quality, but it's also important to mention, I mean, we want to tailor this to their particular case. I mean, each country is different. There's a different political setup. And that's something, actually, I think, Rebecca, you mentioned that tailoring these things to countries is important. I think there's a risk. I was having some conversations yesterday that there's a risk that using off-the-shelf advice, you kind of get a one-size-fits-all solution. And it's not really the case. So we're trying to tailor things as much as possible. But also what we're trying to do is bring this wider perspective that I mentioned, how cybersecurity is important not just for the sake of cybersecurity, it also needs to fit into a lot of other areas. So, for example, we're asking countries to share with us related policies and ongoing initiatives, upcoming initiatives, etc., so that we can try and encourage them to kind of invest cybersecurity in there and give them recommendations such as taking a seat on the working group, for example, or at least just making sure that the strategy is aligning. So we see that there's plenty of things to focus on and plenty of challenges to face. But you also mentioned opportunities now, and I think this really ties in with this same point, to be honest. I mean, any country that has a blank slate in terms of cybersecurity or in other areas too, really have an opportunity to bring this concept of secure by design to life and make sure that security principles are being considered. Well, actually, you can probably attest to this, Vanessa. Now that Vanessa, by the way, is a co-chair of a working group that I'm a member of in ITUD. We get a lot of contributions from member states about great initiatives that they're doing, but in a lot of cases, it's reactive. It's solving a problem that they've already faced. And I think then for LDCs and any other country that's developing, they really have the opportunity, let's say, to already, to leverage the steps that have been taken internationally and learn from the mistakes or the journeys that other countries have been on. So this is where I see the opportunities lie.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, again, another excellent segue in terms of knowing a little bit more about this opportunity. So I'm turning to you, Vanessa, in your role in representing Brazil and also co-chairing the ITU study group on this. We want to know, as countries are developing these regulatory frameworks and practices, how can, sharing of experiences, collecting of data help them, and how does the ITU study group help with that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, and thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here in beautiful Ghana. So when countries are looking to adopt or develop any cybersecurity regulation, practices, initiatives, actions, or even organizations, not necessarily a country, I mean, the first step is you have to identify and understand your problem. This would, in something that relates also when Rebecca was mentioning, you have to identify what you're looking for. And after you identify, then you have the second step, which is to understand also what has been done to address that issue. And here I think it's also, when it comes to the time that you can look into your own country to see what other organizations, other sectors are doing. You can look to reach out to other countries, to partners, to see what the other countries are doing. You can look at other regions and more globally. So we cannot underestimate the value of looking and understanding and learning for the lessons of these experiences of other countries, other regions, and this is something that we have been seeing here in this conference for the past 2 days. We have heard so many different dimension experiences, successful experience, and very inspiring experiences. So while, and something that also Samuel mentioned, there is no fit-size approach, it's true. There is no yellow brick road to the happy end here, to the Oz. There is no silver bullet, but there is an opportunity to learn from all the other practices and choose. I think this is very important, especially for developing countries, to choose your own path, the path that will take into consideration your needs, your priorities, your culture, your context. And of course, this is true for every organization and every region as well. There is one theory from one development political scientist in Brazil that he advocates for the importation of models because he, in his theory, he makes a difference between accepting exported models versus importing with the appropriate adaptation of the model. And this is something that, again, Samuel and Rebecca mentioned when we are tailoring the things. So you can look for these experiences. It doesn't mean that you have to adapt this as they are. It means that you can take this as an inspiration and build and develop the one that will fit the needs of your country. And I mean, the whole conference, it's all about this, of showcasing great opportunities that we can learn and also forge new relationships, new partnerships, and reinforce the already existing ones. And also taking the privilege of having the mic, I want to showcase one specific work that's going on the development sector of ITU, which is the International Telecommunication Union. And it is a platform for discussion. It's a place where membership can discuss and engage in very specific items. And of course, one of these topics is cybersecurity. So, for example, just to clarify a little bit of what, who, and how we work. So, it's a membership-driven discussion, as well as the GFCE. It has a 4-year cycle, and this cycle is co-chaired by Brazil and United Kingdom. And the items of study is decided by membership in a conference. And for the cycle, for example, we are addressing capacity building as well. We are addressing 5G cybersecurity, incident response, CSIRT coordination, and cybersecurity assurances practice. And the key core of our study is the sharing of the best practices of the country. So we also organize an open workshop on an annual basis for allowing the participation of different experts and also different stakeholders in this process. And in a nutshell, it's another platform to exchange the learning lessons of countries and of organizations. But more important than showcasing here, what we are trying to do is also to invite you also to engage in this process. And we can see that we have a different audience here than the audience that participate in our discussions in the group. So I think one idea also is to invite you to reach out to your national delegations to ITU, or to check if your organization is member of ITU. And in this way also, you can also showcase your organization's or country's best practices on the matter. Second, you can also learn from the great contributions and experiences that already have been shared in this platform. And 3, you can also shape the outcomes of this effort, because we are always at the end looking for the impact of the process. So with this, Yasmin, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And I'll definitely take you up on that invite and a call to get people to participate. So I see there's already hands up, which I'm very excited about. Can we get a microphone maybe in the audience, if possible? So I'll start with the lady over here. If you can quickly introduce yourself.
Fascinated, and I need more clarification. Axon, you pointed out that actually in working with ITU, your capacity is being built because you didn't have much knowledge of the context in developing countries. In the old days, they would have said that if you sign a contract to support a developing country, so-called, or emerging economy, there should be a capacity transfer agreement where you would be working with companies in that location so that they are actually going to be able to provide the service that you are providing at that material moment. So you don't have a situation where 5 years later, you're still calling in a foreign company to provide that service. So that's basic capacity transfer. So I would like more clarification on what you're doing precisely or capacity transfer, how you're building up companies within these countries to provide the services that you are currently outsourcing to so-called more developed economies. The second thing is Regine mentioned, and I really want to thank you for mentioning that. You mentioned that language is a factor. And what we find is this discourse, whether it is at the national level, international level, we are speaking in these languages that in Africa at least, the vast majority of our populations do not master. And not enough attention is being paid to actually putting the material and packaging the material in such a way that they can understand the issues and they can take it forward. Unless we are able to do that, we are not going to have the level of national debate that you need to really build up capacity. And everybody knows it's the weakest link. So I just want that is to draw your attention to this, and thank you, Regine. Germany has always been very, very much focused on this. This is the International Decade for Indigenous Languages, so we would have hoped there would have been more about that. But I want the clarification on capacity transfer, and if we have agreements with the companies that are being used now in terms of how they would work with a number of companies in the local context to actually transfer skills, not just the so-called target beneficiary.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. And you raise a very good point now, and you started by saying that we also get some knowledge transfer here, and that is very important. I think in the private sector, cybersecurity itself is a real exploding industry, and you should be getting as much learning as possible. And that's the other reason why we're involved in these initiatives with ITU in general, being at conferences like this. In our particular case, I mean, we're not working with a local company to this kind of train the trainer concept, which I mean, it's a very, very good idea and would be probably it would have very good effects longer term, like you say. What we're doing, and all of my clients are government officials in cybersecurity authorities or in ministries, regulators, this kind of thing. And really, I think that the capacity problem, I mean, the capacity gap there in these countries is particularly there. I mean, what you want is to have the government officials really with the capability to understand and to be able to drive change and convince people and all of this. I don't think it necessarily needs to be another consultancy sitting in that country that the government has to pay for to get this expertise when they don't even have this funding, and that's one of the issues we're trying to solve. So, I mean, one of the things that we do, we don't have any contract in place going forward to keep keep in touch, keep providing the expertise, etc. But what we do try to do is we terminate our project, mini project with this entity with a presentation. We were creating a presentation that explains all of the gaps that we found, all of the recommendations that we're providing, and we leave this with them. So this is now a tool, a resource, let's say, the material that the point of contact we have in this government can start to use then to actually convince other people. We have also committed to some follow-ups to try and see how we can disseminate this information to support in that. But I think that this is the real area that we'd like to target. It's having the governments themselves with the capacity rather than the private sector in that country.
Thanks for that, Samuel. I hope that answered the question, and I'm just going to very quickly maybe abuse my role as moderator and add on to that very quickly. So also at the ITU, whenever we are setting up national cybersecurity strategies or providing assistance in that, we try to have a multi-stakeholder approach where every capacity building exercise we run, there are representatives of the local private sector, the bank sector, for example, and others, not just governments, but obviously joining on that, on Sam's point. So I'm told that there's a question in French. Yes, please. We just need quickly to get the translation. Je vous en prie, allez-y.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je suis Salomon Gilles Mercier d'Ongopai. Je viens de la République centrafricaine. Je suis directeur du système réseau dans une organisation étatique de mon pays. Je suis très heureux d'être là, de participer à cette conférence mondiale et partager les expériences avec tous les acteurs de cybersécurité. Alors, j'oublie le nom d'une panéliste, c'est pas Madame qui est de ce côté. Oui, elle a parlé et j'ai aimé ce qu'elle a dit dans son intervention. Alors, dans mon pays actuellement, nous sommes en train de commencer dans la phase de digitalisation. Et nous avons des partenaires qui nous soutiennent en nous donnant des équipements, mais c'est encore à l'état embryonnaire. Nous venons de commencer. Et même en ce qui concerne la cybersécurité, on a emboîté le pas en ce sens qu'il y a des textes de loi qui ont été déposés sur la table des gouverneurs, du gouvernement, pour valider ces textes, les politiques en matière de cybersécurité. Donc on vient de commencer. On est venu pour se faire renforcer, mais on a vraiment besoin de ce partenariat. Et quand elle parlait de voie création de groupes, et qu'elle disait que si on a besoin de renforcement de capacité, collaborer avec certains experts, voir le modèle et tout, et du coup, c'est ce que j'ai vraiment à cœur. Donc, si vraiment elle peut nous donner ces informations, nous éclairer, comment on peut intégrer ce groupe, comment on peut avoir ce partenariat pour que ces expériences puissent nous aider en République centrafricaine. On en a vraiment besoin. Donc, c'est ma préoccupation. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So Vanessa, the question is for you. Would you like to take it?
So thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, I cannot speak directly in French. I wish I could. We even had a representative from Central Africa in our meeting. So I think one of the options is we can put you in contact with this delegate. But of course, after I can show you and explain a little bit more about how we work, how you can reach out. And also maybe you can find the specific focal point in your country for ITU. And with this start, we can start navigating and show you where you can access the information, because sometimes it's a little difficult to navigate the site. So we can we can help you in this process. And of course, I'm gonna give you my contact. We can assist you in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. So we have one here at the front, and then...
Yeah, just before I pass the microphone, I'm from ITU as well. ITU team can help you. So the ITU team can also help you to connect you with a study group. So because I think Yasmin can speak French, so you can reach out to her if Vanessa cannot help you. But I think ITU team is willing to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca. I think that we tend to focus too much on the type of strategy each country should use. But there are broad models of strategy that with this global cybersecurity landscape, we cannot run away from it. I'll introduce, it's common, but I want us to always reflect on these three big models. In the models, you can also get some of the strategy that you want your country to adapt. So you look at the national security model. In there, you are able to have strategies to manage organized crimes in terms of piracy, in terms of money laundering. You get it in there. You take the economic model. When you look at the economic model, the banking system comes in, the telecos comes in, and so you are able to develop your strategies in around that model. And then the last but not the least is my favorite model, the epidemiology model. That is the one of the basic models. And in there, you want to look at how to protect systems that are attacked by ransomware, virus, etc., etc. So just, unless somebody has a new model that he wants to introduce, otherwise, you look at these three big models, and in there, you'll be able to develop strategies around your country's needs. Thank you.
If no one of the participants wants to respond, yes. So Jason, I will just touch from my perspective. There is a guide for developing national cybersecurity strategies. So all these components you mentioned are mentioned there. So basically the countries can take an approach on looking at their landscape and how they want to develop the strategy. But I can tell you there is work being done in WHO where we are helping them as ITU to help them on developing the strategy of how to protect health systems and so on. I think in principle things have been covered, and there is a common guide made by 20 over organizations to guide countries that, it's kind of high-level guide, but it gives you a framework how you can develop the national cybersecurity strategy and an action plan. I think, there are ways to do things, but I think only thing what we are missing as a community is to inform you that such guides are available there. And that's why 20 organizations came together, so to reduce the number of guides of developing national cybersecurity strategy. That's in principle what has been done by ITU and many organizations together, so I think we need to follow those kind of models. And please, if you are willing to access the website, it's ncsguide.org. It's a community product. It's not ITU product, but it's community product, and you can benefit out of it. Thank you.
I would like to add something from our experience, and that is that a national cybersecurity strategy has to be developed also in a multi-stakeholder approach. So including all the non-governmental stakeholders that have to take a role in building cybersecurity and be part of the cybersecurity architecture.
I think anyone else from the panel? Vanessa, you wanted to? Yes. So at the back, if possible, he'd been calling for a while. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Sengendo from Uganda. And my question goes to Rebecca, together with Samuel. Rebecca spoke about the sovereignty of countries, and then I want to relate it with Samuel's question, rather Samuel's submission about capacity building for LDCs, because that is the term that we have used. Now, I'll give you a scenario whereby we established partnerships with foreign companies, and we were required to go for training and then got funding from one of the funding agency, which I don't want to mention. And that whole capacity building process was halted because of the effect that a legislation that was made in my country had on the funding. So literally it trickled down, the legislation affected the funding from the funding agency because of whatever happened. So I want us to discuss how this can be done such that it doesn't have an effect on any future partnerships, especially in cybersecurity that will be established. Thank you.
Can you maybe further develop a bit on what the effect was? Concretely, like how you mentioned that the legislation had the effect on the funding, correct?
Yes, legislation was about the LGBT and the likes. So because of that legislation, it had a ripple effect that the funding had to be cut, the funding that was coming from the donor agency.
Thank you for clarifying. Rebecca, would you like to take that one?
Yes. So thank you very much. So definitely within the UK, any project that we do has to meet certain principles. And obviously the one that would be there would be the gender inequality. That without having that kind of focus or that component within your project, we would not be able to get any funding regardless. And so if something, as you said, legislation within your country, there's the only thing that we can then probably go back to do is kind of lobby our ministers or our kind of senior permanent secretaries to see whether we could find an exemption. But I have to say, there are rather stringent rulings that we have to go around. So it is interesting to understand what you're saying, that the work just stops, and there has to be some sort of common sense approach, I think, put down forward. So if the work is ongoing, that we should be able to finish and complete the exercise with yourself. But from our side, I think kind of trying to circumnavigate those principles is quite hard from the UK government.
Would you like to come in as well?
Sure. I mean, I don't have a huge amount to say on this apart from, likewise, similar experience. Consulting and, to governments especially can be a very, very formal game, and you have to go through a lot of tenders, a lot of official processes, things like this. And, you have to tick certain boxes for particular stakeholders. But, I mean, going a bit off piste, maybe I shouldn't say this, but in my experience, the most successful, the impact that you have is often this more informal engagements, And I think this comes back to the idea of partnership that we've been talking about. We partner with the organizations that we support. Obviously, it's our business model. It's a financial reason that we do this. But in the end, I have a personal connection with the person I'm trying to help here. And quite often, he or she will need particular support on something that's not really within the scope of what we're doing, or it's in between projects. And it's here that you're able to actually give them, as I said before, materials that they can use to push things through. So I think in some ways, I mean, it's not a great answer, but in some ways, where there's a will, there's a way. And, maybe it's on yourself to kind of push things through and find this way, but with a little bit of support in this informal manner. I mean, as soon as you take funding or money out of the equation, a bit like what we're doing with ITU, things go so much smoother. So this is the only advice I have there, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. In-kind support indeed is also can be helpful in these kinds of situations. And also diversification of donors, as some donors have some priorities different than others. One question over there, yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Gilbert. I'm CEO of Africa Cyber Defense Forum. My question goes basically to Rebecca and Regine with regards to when it comes to donor collaboration. For example, you find there are cases where you have a donor X is funding a project in country Y, then a donor Y comes in, and also you're talking almost similar projects being funded by almost similar donors. So the question comes in, what exactly is the problem? Because there's no way you can be in one country and there's no cohesion when it comes to some of these programs that run. Without giving specific country names, there are cases you find that donor X is funding a project maybe on data protection, but another one as well is funding almost similar. So the question comes in, is it an issue of interest of donor X is not aligned, but at the end of the day, if you want to have this country, then I think the cohesion from the donor side is also very, very key. The number two question is, the lady talked about the issue of building local capacity. We're building capacity for many years, right? I mean, some countries got independence, they're almost 70 years since independence. And this is not the global south. We've been talking about capacity building. Some of us are starting to ask the question, when it's going to end? And not that the fact that it should end, but at least we get to a point where we have to say, okay, fine, we build enough capacity, that at least this book should also build capacity for others. We can't do capacity for this global south forever. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Regina, would you like to start?
Yeah, perhaps I start with your second question. Actually, there are parts of cyber capacity building that will never end, because what the purpose of this part of cyber capacity building is establishing functioning networks among people. And as people rotate in and out, for example, being member of a CERT or being a cyber diplomat or whatever, every new generation has to run through this part of capacity building. If it always has to be funded by a foreign government, that's another question. But the capacity building itself is not intended to stop anywhere soon.
Thank you. So I'll kind of answer on the first part of the question about donor countries. Yes, we've found ourselves being working in a country, and then we find that there is, one of our partners is also there delivering a similar project. And I think, some of the accountability does rely on ourselves to try and better coordinate between ourselves and to kind of, as we say, deconflict and avoid this duplication. Because as I've said, funding is, tight in all our countries, so we need to make sure that we are, providing the best offer to the recipient countries. But where we are actually working in a country within Latin America where we did a mapping exercise with the donor countries there to understand about where we could actually have impact. And it's been working very well. And I think this is something that we probably need to kind of replicate much more on a global scale and do have potentially have a workshop somewhere to kind of start to deliver this. But there's also a bit of accountability on the country's side as well. So I think when you're getting multiple offers from donors on the same area, you know, you need to be telling us that you've got multiple offers. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't, you know, we all need to work together. And if you're thinking you're getting too much help in one area, then let us know. And we're always quite happy to try and pivot. But yeah, I absolutely understand kind of about your frustration on that side. And just thinking about what Regina said about capacity building, you know, cybersecurity is an evolving environment. I can't ever see that, you know, that ever finishing. Even in ourselves, we are constantly learning and having to, you know, adapt to new emerging technologies. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Maybe quickly back to Chris.
Thank you, Gilbert. Maybe what I want just to say is, I think previously I mentioned that as the countries who are receiving the donor-funded maybe projects, there is need for us to get organized, emphasized on the being a focal point, let's say cybersecurity, so that maybe any donor who is coming would just be referred to that focal point and be able to get more what is required and I mean, what activities are happening and what is missing. That's very key. I think which I gave an example of a certain program was running, well, World Bank. They needed to do something. They consulted us, and then we were advised to say we are missing this point. So this goes back to countries who are receiving these donors to get organized and give forward what is required and what is the priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, it does go both ways. So coordination on the ground and coordination between donors. And when we get both, then it will be possible. Sam, no? So maybe I'll go back to the Q&A. In the meantime, I wanted to close this to have maybe like one key takeaway or two from each. So maybe while you prepare that, I'll turn to the next question.
Thank you, Yasmini. My name is Reverend Dr. Nanaya Prempe. I've taken a few things from this panel, and I was in the UK last month when the Prime Minister hosted the AI Summit. And he personally interviewed, what's his name, the Tesla gentleman, Elon Musk, yes. And there was a little scare in the air when Elon was talking about the impact of AI in the future, which is already here. I don't know if the same experts in the cybersecurity industry are going to be handling AI attacks, because it is seriously going to be more than what we think. And for now, when I go around conferences, it looks like it's the same faces you see. So the capacity building is never ending. When are we going to open up capacity building for the younger people, newer generation? Because we, the same people, are receiving capacity building every day, every time, at the same conferences. You see the same faces. And we personally, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, where as a woman entrepreneur who has not personally benefited from any support financially, technically, from any donor agency. And we keep saying there is support. Where is that support? So before I leave this conference, I need someone to hold my hand and take me somewhere and show me where the money is. Show me where the support is, either technical or financial. Because I'm seriously tired of going to conferences and hearing the money is there, the support is there. The donors will tell you, are not in our system. What does it take for me to get in the system? I think somebody needs to walk us through the walk and the talk so that, you know, it's not the same people benefiting all the time. I don't know if donor agencies only deal with governments. I know the DANIDA, USAID, they all say we are dealing with government, but it's the private sector that's moving the nation. So I need help to know where the money is, show me how to get the money, and show me who to talk to. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. So I assume that's a comment more than a question. So if Sam, would you like to?
Well, I heard two parts to the question. First of all, about these new technologies and who's going to be dealing with that from this community, no? And I mean, I'll leave out the part about money. I'm sure you can speak to someone else about this. But no, I mean, in our particular consultancy, I mean, we're positioning ourselves as emerging technology specialists to deal with policy as well as the technical level, combining these two things. So we learn on behalf of our clients, So at the moment, I have a couple of studies. They're just studies for the moment, but it's studies on generative AI and their impact in policy, their implications, risks, things like that, but also the opportunities. We are doing work to gain this knowledge and share this wider. We also produce research materials occasionally. But I think it's also an opportunity. I mean, you mentioned young people and what are they interested in working in? And I think AI particularly is something very attractive to people. And some of the talks this week has been about how do we bring youth and talent to and keep them in cybersecurity, and especially keep them on the good side of cybersecurity. And so I think something like AI could be quite a nice opportunity to do this and to bring people into this exciting space and why it's important. So it's a double-edged thing, I'd say.
Thank you for addressing that. Thank you, Sam. And we're a bit over time, but so I would like to close here. If there's any more questions, feel free to come up to our speakers after. So just to wrap this up, maybe one sentence, what would be one main takeaway for you, Rebecca, from this session? Oh, let's start on this side in that case. Vanessa.
So my sentence will be, there are a lot of things out there, a lot of interesting experiences, initiatives, lessons learned that you can take into consideration, but of course in adapting to your own needs, priorities, context, and culture. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. Sam?
I think my biggest takeaway by listening to everyone else here on the panel is the need for clear and transparent information sharing between all these different parties, because we're trying to build a community around this, it seems. And you've mentioned at the donor level, for example, there should be communication. There needs to be transparency between the members, the beneficiaries, and the other entities. So I think it needs to be a very transparent, clear, and community built on trust. That's my take.
Trust, that's an excellent way of putting it. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, I think there's need for collaboration at the donor level and also at local level. Very key. We're not competing. We're working together. So there's need for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina?
So from my point of view, cyber capacity building can be seen from two perspectives. One is bottom up and the other is top down. And I think the angle of Madam here is somehow related to that this is not always a meeting. So we have a multitude and abundance of cyber capacity building projects, and not everything is seen, recognizable as capacity building, and matches into what we have as broad policy guidelines. So I take this angle with me as a motivation to do better.
Excellent takeaway. Thank you. Rebecca?
I kind of wish I started first. So I'm also going to say, especially around the collaboration part. So definitely I'm going to be taking away to look much more what I can do on the donor collaboration side, but also what the gentleman was saying about kind of in-country capacity transfer as well. I don't think I've embedded that enough within kind of projects that I'm delivering. So I think I'm going to go away and see what more we can be doing there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for our speakers today. Thank you.